Computer. Okay. And let me share my screen. Okay. And make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. There we have three people in my office besides me today, which is nice. Our class is getting bigger. And we have one copy of the printed edition here in the office. We're on page 93 in the Koran edition of Avodah Zarah. And I think we're coming to the end of chapter 1 because we're just getting into this midrash now, into this rabbinic commentary, just about this sense of how we're supposed to be relating with non-Jews. So the whole chapter so far was about all different aspects of doing business with non-Jews. And it's, if you remember, it started by saying how great the Jews are, right? And that everything in the world that other people do comes from the Jews. The Roman calendar, the Greek calendar, all based on Jews. And so we should think that Jews are great. Remember that the rabbis are teaching this as in the midst of Roman persecution and oppression. So it's kind of on purpose, theologically, they're saying we are still the best people in the world, even though it doesn't seem that way because we're persecuted. So now we're getting back to that idea. We had stories last time about people, rabbis and their families being punished for teaching Torah in public, right? And we continue, thanks, Mara. We continue on a different kind of story here with this. We left off at the red S. The sages taught, when Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma fell ill, Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion went to visit him. There are lots of stories throughout the Talmud of rabbis visiting sick colleagues. So Hanina ben Teradion went to see Yosef ben Kisma. Being sick, of course, in ancient times meant you could be dying. So it's a visit to kind of bolster the spirit boost the spirit of the sick, but also a potential, come to terms with your life because perhaps you might be dying. So Hanina ben Teradion went to visit him. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said to him, Hanina, my brother, do you not know that this nation has been given rain by a decree from heaven? That is, the Romans. The Romans are in charge of us, and God determined that they are in charge. That's what that means, given rain by decree from heaven. Right? Rome wouldn't be in charge if God didn't allow Rome to be in charge. The proof is that Rome has destroyed God's temple and burned his sanctuary and killed his pious ones and destroyed his best ones, and it still exists, right? So Rome has done this to the Jewish community, even destroying God's house, and so it must be, and they're still around as strong as ever, it must be because God wants it to happen. Evidently, all of this is by divine decree, and yet I heard about you, that you sit and engage in Torah study and convene assemblies in public and have a Torah scroll placed in your lap, thereby demonstrating complete disregard for the decrees issued by the Romans. In other words, it seems, so let's step back. So Yossi ben Kisma is saying to Hanina, why are you doing all these things in violation of Roman decrees when God has decreed that Rome should be in charge? So I think this reflects a bigger question from the rabbis. How are we supposed to come to terms with the fact that Rome has been able to destroy the temple in Jerusalem, right? So the Bible teaches about the destruction of the first temple in Jerusalem. The prophets are teaching that God wants it to happen. Jeremiah teaches, at threat to his own life, that the people should not fight the Babylonians, even though the king of Judah wants to fight the Babylonians. So Jeremiah says throughout his book that this is God's decree, that Babylonia is on the rise, is coming to Israel, and is going to destroy the temple as punishment and send the people into exile as punishment for the people's wayward actions and putting idols in the temple. So this is something from the Bible itself. And if that's in the Bible for the destruction of the first temple, then the rabbis apply the same theological logic to the destruction of the second temple. And it must be the Jews' fault that Rome is able to be in charge and to destroy the temple. So who are we? The sick Yossi ben Kisma says to Hanina, who are we to defy Roman decrees when it seems like that's coming from God? So should the rabbis be following Yossi ben Kisma's attitude, like don't fight against the Romans and just give in to their decrees? Or should they be following Hanina's attitude? No, let's continue to teach Torah in public in violation of the decree. How are we supposed to be Jewish? The rabbis are asking by this story. Are we supposed to hide the fact that we're Jewish and give in to the Roman decree? Or are we supposed to publicly defy the decree and be proud of the fact that we're Jewish and still teach Judaism in public? So that's the question. It's a question that has persisted tragically throughout the ages. Wherever Jews have lived and been persecuted, they ask this very question. Right? And in Nazi Germany, asked this very question too. Give in to the Nazis or fight against the Nazis, right? So you have the Warsaw Ghetto uprising as an example, etc. So Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion said to him, so he answers Yossi ben Kisma's question, why he's defying the Roman decree. Heaven will have mercy and protect me. So that's his answer. You know, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, supposed to be teaching Torah, convening assemblies in public, having a Torah scroll in my lap when I teach. This is what I'm supposed to do. So if I'm supposed to do this, God's going to protect me. That's what I believe. Yossi ben Kisma said to him, I'm saying reasonable matters to you, and you say to me, heaven will have mercy? I wonder if the Romans will not burn both you and your Torah scroll by fire. Now, this is just fascinating to me that the rabbis are allowing this story to be published in the Talmud. That, in other words, Yossi ben Kisma, an accepted rabbi in the Jewish community at the time, is saying we should be giving in to the Romans and not be teaching publicly, and saying, I'm saying something reasonable to you, and you say to me, heaven will have mercy. In other words, we're supposed to act logically. We shouldn't be acting as if we expect God to intervene. Right? So Hanina is saying, I'm expecting God to protect me, to intervene against Roman, these Roman decrees, and in violation of logic, because they've seen other rabbis be tortured to death publicly by the Romans for doing the very thing that Hanina ben Tradion is doing. Right? So they see, like there's stories of Rabbi Akiva, all the stories that are in the Machzor for the Yom Kippur martyrology service are all from the Talmud about rabbis being tortured and killed by the Romans for this very thing. So logic says, don't do this. Yossi ben Kisma says, don't do this and don't expect God to intervene. So, which is a radical idea for the rabbis, because most of the time they're saying, you know, if you do the right thing, then you should be protected by God for it. I wonder, right. So I wonder if the Romans will not burn both you and your Torah scroll by fire. Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion said to him, my teacher, what will become of me? Am I destined for life in the world to come? So in other words, I'm going to do what I'm doing, and maybe I'll be killed by the Romans for it, but maybe also I'll be rewarded with life, with my soul living on in the next world, in the world to come. That's what the rabbis teach at this time, creating this idea that has been around, a Jewish idea for 1,800 years, since the time of the rabbis, that though we might be punished in this world, we'll be rewarded, our soul will be rewarded in the next world after we die, by living on in God's presence in the world to come. Yossi ben Kisma, the sick guy, said to him, "Did any special incident occur to you which might serve as an indication? Like, did you have any kind of sign to tell you that you might be rewarded with world to come?" Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion said to him, "I confused my own coins that I needed for the festivities of Purim with coins of charity, and I distributed them all to the poor at my own expense." Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said to him, "If that is so, may my portion be of your portion, and may my lot be of your lot." So in other words, there's this sign that that Chanina ben Tradion did this mitzvah. He was able to have enough money to distribute to the poor on Purim. It's fortuitous that we're studying this today when Purim begins tomorrow night. One of the mitzvot of Purim is to give gifts to the poor, which we have the opportunity to fulfill by bringing a box of pasta to use as a grogger tomorrow night and then leaving it here to donate to Only Help. So this is something you're supposed to give money to the poor on Purim. So since he did that, Yossi ben Kisma says, okay, that's your sign, and that if that's your sign, then maybe God is agreeing with you, and therefore I agree with you that we should violate the Roman decree and teach Torah publicly with a Torah scroll on our lap. The sages said, not even a few days passed, But
Tradion gave it away by mistake.
But I confused my own coins that I needed for the festivities with Purim with coins of charity, and I distributed them all to the poor at my own expense. In other words, money, he set aside coins for his own Purim Suda. He used that for charity, but somehow he had extra money for his own Purim Suda. I think that's what we understand. So he gave extra money than he had planned to give to the poor. The sages said, not even a few days passed before Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma died of his illness, and all of the Roman notables went to bury him, and they eulogized him with a great eulogy. And upon their return, they found Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion, who was sitting and engaging in Torah study and convening assemblies in public with a Torah scroll placed in his lap. So now this is something too, who knows, it's very highly unlikely that Roman notables would attend a funeral of a rabbi, let alone any Jew. But it's very unlikely that they would do that. And this is just the rabbis projecting back just to highlight the point that they want to teach, which is that Yossi ben Kisma, who had acceded to the Roman demands and not taught Torah in public, was seen, therefore, by the Romans as a good man, a decent man. So let's attend his funeral. But then, at the very time that they were attending his funeral, Chanina ben Tradion was teaching Torah in public in violation of the Roman decrees. So what did the Romans do to Chanina? They brought him to be sentenced, wrapped him in the Torah scroll, and encircled him with bundles of branches, and they set fire to it. And they brought tufts of wool and soaked them in water and placed them on his heart, so that his whole soul should not leave his body quickly, but he would die slowly and painfully. His daughter said to him, "Father, must I see you like this?" Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion said to her, If I alone were being burned, it would be difficult for me. But now that I am burning along with the Torah scroll, he who will seek retribution for the insult according to the Torah scroll will also seek retribution for the insult accorded to me. His student said to him, our teacher, what do you see? Rabbi, okay, so this is a theme to these stories, that the rabbi who is being tortured to death is able to overcome his pain and have a conversation, either with his family member or with his students, instead of screaming in agony. Okay, so this is just one of many such stories of rabbis being tortured to death. And oh, by the way, I'll take this time to teach a Torah lesson. Okay, his students said to him, our teacher, what do you see? Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion said to them, I see the parchment burning, but its letters are flying to the heavens. This is famous. I think we've seen this. Perhaps not in the edition of the Machzor that we use now, but it might be in the edition of the Machzor that we used before. So in that martyrology service, I think there's this story that's there. I see the parchment burning, but its letters are flying to the heavens. There's a note here. The meaning of the question posed by the students was how Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion foresaw the future of the Jewish people, given the decrees against their religion and belief. Rabbi Hanina's reply was that those attacks were against the physical Torah, and their impact was only superficial. The conceptual content of the Torah cannot be burned, but would continue to exist and thrive forever. Okay, so I see the Torah is burning right now, but the words exist independent of the Torah scroll right now, and the power of the words will support us, will sustain us in generations to come. They said to him, you too should open your mouth, and the fire will enter you, and you will die quickly. Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion said to them, it is preferable that he who gave me my soul should take it away, and what should not harm oneself to speed his death. So here he's teaching this lesson. The Romans put the wet wool on his chest to prevent him from dying quickly from the fire. And the students are saying, you're in agony. Open your mouth, let the fire enter your body. And he said, no, we don't do anything to hasten death. The executioner said to him, my teacher, if I increase the flame and take off the tufts of wool from your heart so that you will die sooner and suffer less, will you bring me to the life of the world to come? So now the executioner is a Roman. The Roman is saying to the rabbi, he's calling the rabbi my teacher, and the Roman wants to have a share in the world to come. So again, here from a story, the rabbis are projecting back and teaching, of course, everybody wants to be part of the Jewish people. Even the Roman executioner wants to be part of the Jewish people and wants to have a share in the world to come. So if I make you suffer less, will I have a share in the world to come? Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion said to the executioner, yes. The executioner said, take an oath from me that what you say is true. Okay, so what a nasty executioner this guy is. Hanina ben Teradion's in agony, and the executioner is tempting him, and now is saying, you got to take an oath before I do it. Hanina ben Teradion took the oath for him, and the executioner immediately increased the flame and took off the tufts of wool from his heart, causing his soul to leave his body quickly. The executioner, too, leaped and fell into the fire and died. All right, so so according to the story, then, the executioner threw himself into the flames, too, because he thought that he would have a share in the world to come. A divine voice emerged and said, Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion and the executioner are destined for the life of the world to come. Upon hearing this, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi wept and said, there is one who acquires his share in the world to come in one moment, such as the executioner, and there is one who acquires his share in the world to come only after many years of toil, such as Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion. Fascinating story. Yes, Bess.
There are two different end of life situations here. Well, one is, and I wanted to know if what Rabbi said that about it, I can't make my death easier, if that quote is used in this discussion of end of life.
It is, and it's understood, so it's an unusual, let me say it this way. I understand Jewish teaching to be that if it is absolutely clear that someone on their deathbed is about to die, then one does not prolong that person's death. One removes things from his body that would be prolonging death and therefore allow the person to die. So in other words, if someone is terminally ill and is attached to a ventilator and a feeding tube, and the doctors determine that the ventilator and feeding tube are there perhaps to allow the person to live longer, but it's clear that the person is not going to live longer, that the ventilator is not helping and the feeding tube is not helping. Most Jewish authorities say you're allowed to withdraw the feeding tube and the ventilator to allow the person to die. And there are others who say that no, once you're attached to these machines, you let nature take its course, even though doctors have intervened with nature. In other words, a ventilator is not part of nature. A feeding tube is not part of nature. It's us trying to overcome nature. But once it's in, some authorities say that you're not supposed to remove it, but most authorities say you do. So according to this story, Hanina ben Tradion might be teaching that no, you cannot. Yeah. So the question is, so Hanina is not allowed to do it himself, but somebody else is allowed to do it for him. So,
but he didn't let him take the wool off.
No, but he did let the executioner do this.
Not at first.
No, he didn't. The students wanted Hanina ben Tradion to do it himself.
Right.
And he said that he wouldn't do it himself, but he would allow the executioner to do it.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a difference there also at end of life. Is the person allowed to hasten death by taking a medication that will hasten the death? Right? Overdose of morphine or something like that to hasten death. So there, most authorities say you're not allowed to do that yourself.
But the executioner, if that's the flip of what's happening here, the executioner does end his life unnecessarily early, and yet he is rewarded with the world to come.
The executioner jumps into the flames. Yes, he's a Roman. He's a Roman.
But he
right.
Gets to go to the world to come?
Yeah. Okay. So now, if we're analyzing this literarily, in other words, what are the big Jewish questions that are being tackled in this story? So one is access to the world to come. Who has access to the world to come? And anybody, according to this story, anybody can have access. So the executioner, even though I think we're supposed to understand that the executioner is the worst of the Roman Empire. People who sign up for the job of carrying out Roman law in such a an evil way, right? So they, like the person who crucified Jesus. So doing crucifixions or torture or anything like that, these executioners sign up for the job. I think I'm not sure I don't think they were forced to be an executioner. People. So these are the worst of the worst of the Roman Empire. So the worst of the worst has access to the world to come by just doing one act of kindness, even in their job, which is the worst of the worst, even while executing a great rabbi by offering some kindness, even with the rabbi taking an oath to allow the executioner to do this kindness of letting Hanina die quicker. He's still doing his evil. He's still killing Hanina, but he's killing Hanina in a slightly more gentle way by hastening his death. Even that, for one little moment in life, out of a life of evil, allows someone to enter the world to come. So if a Roman executioner can get the world to come just from one little act of kindness, how much more so Jews can have a share in the world to come.
It would have been an act of kindness had the executioner removed the tuft of wool before the oath.
Yes, of course. So even with forcing Hanina in his agony to take this oath, which is affirmed also by a divine voice coming out to say that the executioner and Hanina made it to the world to come. There's clearly the events in the story did not happen. Okay, so the purpose of this story is for the rabbis to teach us a lesson. Okay, all the stories in the Gemara are not real stories. They are not real events. They are all written in a way to elaborate the point that was being made already in the Gemara, or to teach a new point. Okay, so the point here is that the most vile of non-Jews, for one simple act of kindness, very, very slight act of kindness, has as much a share in the world to come as one of the greatest rabbis of the generation. So that, I think, would be problematic for some people, right? So in other words, Jewish people might be thinking, we work all our lives, try to be as good a person as possible to try to achieve blessing in this life. And perhaps if we get a share in the world to come, who knows if we'll ever get that? Nobody has come back from the world to come to say that. So that's the point of this story too, right? The divine voice coming down to prove to people that the world to come exists. Nobody knows that the world to come exists. The rabbis are creating the idea of the world to come, right? It's not in the Bible. It's not in the Torah. It's not in the rest of the Bible. No sense of anything about a world to come. Okay, there is a sense of a time of the Messiah, that a descendant of King David will come down to earth and reestablish kingship in Israel, and the temple will be rebuilt. That's in the Bible, but no sense in the meantime that soul exists independent of body, and soul can achieve the world to come. That's something the rabbis made up. And in order to prove that their new Jewish idea is a true idea, they write these stories and back it up with saying the divine voice came down and everybody heard that Hanina ben Tradion and this Roman executioner made it into the world to come. Zella.
I know this is to the side, but just is this story implying that Rabbi Hanina had the power to decide who was going to be in the world to come? Or he knew
right.
what was necessary to get there?
Yeah. No, that's a good point too. So so the rabbis also say that certain rabbis have such authority, have such power. So in the Bible, we have, in the Christian Bible, there are lots of stories about Jesus doing miracles. right? Raises somebody up from the dead, Lazarus. He feeds the poor along the Sea of Galilee just with one fish and one bottle of wine, becomes much more fish and bottles of wine for the people there. So Jesus does a lot of miracles, okay? That's not necessarily not a Jewish trope, because in the Jewish Bible, we have one of the prophets, Elisha, who does miracles like this. And so Jesus wasn't the first one. Remember, Jesus was Jewish, preaching to Jews in the land of Israel. And then the Christian Bible written afterwards to highlight how great Jesus was. So did Jesus perform these miracles or not? Who knows? But these miracles are said to have happened, but they didn't make them up about Jesus out of whole cloth, because they used the stories of Elisha in the Bible in either 1 or 2 Kings. I don't remember which one it is. Several stories about Elisha doing things like that. He raised somebody from the dead, and that's in the Haftarah for the portion Vayera of this kid who is a miraculous birth, right? A barren woman and husband. Elisha says, in a year to come, you'll have a child. Child is born, and then he drops dead. And they call Elisha to come. Elisha lies on top of the boy, breathes into him, like it looks like CPR. The kid sneezes and comes back to life. Okay, and then there's another story. The same Haftarah has the story about a poor woman who Elisha says to her, take all the pitchers of oil that you have in your house and start pouring. And take the one pitcher that you have, or the one container of oil that you have, and borrow all the vessels that you can from your neighbors and start pouring. And she keeps on pouring olive oil and miraculously fills all these vessels. So she's not poor anymore because she can sell the olive oil. So there are stories of prophets of Elisha having the power to do something like this, and God telling other prophets to dress in a particular way or to say something, or God tells Moses to raise his staff and then the sea parts and all the plagues. So there are examples of people in the Torah and in the Bible doing miraculous things. So the rabbis who say that they are the next in line in a chain of tradition from the prophets, it's not a stretch for them to say that we also have this power to we can connect to this power from God and do this. So there are lots of stories of rabbis doing miraculous things. There's a Purim story, in fact, where one rabbi, because these rabbis drank too much, one rabbi being drunk kills another rabbi, and then is distraught that he killed his friend, asks God to bring the rabbi to life. The rabbi is brought back to life, and then it's next Purim, and he invites that rabbi back to his house for Purim, and that rabbi says, "You think miracles are going to happen twice?" So they can make fun of themselves as well about this. But there are lots of stories like this and others in which rabbis have miraculous have a connection when needed to do something miraculous. So Steve, then Arnie.
So you said that the afterlife was kind of a creation of the rabbis.
Yeah.
They derive that or as a reaction to Christianity's afterlife or the surrounding Greek culture, or is there any basis for that?
So it's hard to say 100% what was the impetus for the rabbis to create this. I think one impetus is to provide comfort to the community that is suffering at the hands of the Romans. And not just to provide comfort, like there is There is a reward for this. The rabbis are saying we're all being punished right now. We're all being tortured, sent into slavery, oppressed, persecuted, but there is a reward for being good. And we'll see it in the world to come. So and also gives a reason why you should still be Jewish, right? So the rabbis could see that people might want to convert to become Roman. Who needs being Jewish if we're just going to be persecuted, right? Just think of the Jews in Spain, right? Leave Spain in 1492 or convert to Christianity or be killed. So lots of Jews converted, and rabbis had to, try to maintain connection with these Jews who converted in order to save their life. So it's not. This is just not a one time only in Jewish history in dealing with this. This is an ongoing problem. So the rabbi, how to maintain spirit, positivity in a time of great persecution and death. And so, and the basis for coming up with this idea of the world to come was not much of a stretch for the rabbis, because there's a reference in the book of Ezekiel to, well, first, the idea of resurrection is not a Christian idea; it's a Jewish idea. You have a vision in the book of Ezekiel of a valley of bones, and Ezekiel is supposed to look at the valley of bones and see that skin and flesh and tissue are being added to the bones. The bones are coming back to life, and it's a lesson in Ezekiel of the people in exile in Babylonia will be spiritually reborn in the land of Israel. But the rabbis take it literally to teach that the idea of resurrection is possible, so that someday in the future, when the Messiah comes, the dead will be brought back to life. But in the meantime, that's Ezekiel, the valley of dry bones. No, it's not. It's humans. It's humans. Oh, yes. Yep. Okay. So, Arnie, you're frozen. Am I frozen?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. Wait. Yeah, my internet is unstable. So just 1 second. I forgot to switch the internet to the one here in the office. Let me see if I can have a better internet. Just 1 second here. Oh, shoot. Don't want that. Okay. Okay. Yes.
So
All right.
can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
So I guess I was interested in there's the concept in the Torah of Sheol,
Yes.
and I thought it was interpreted as afterlife. So is that different?
So Sheol, there are several references to Sheol in the Torah and in the Bible, and that from context is someplace underground. And there's also a concept that when somebody dies, they are being collected or joining their ancestors. Okay, so what does that mean, that they're joining their ancestors? From context, it means just as their ancestors are dead, they're dead too. That's from the context. And Sheol, we don't know what Sheol means, but from context, it's somewhere down underground. So it's in Psalms, it's in other books of the Bible, it's in the Torah too, about this concept of Sheol. So the rabbis take all these references, right? Oh, and also King Saul goes to the witch of Endor to bring back the spirit of Samuel to ask for advice. And Samuel says, "Why have you disturbed me? And for this punishment, for bringing me back, you are not going to be the dynasty ends with you, and a new sovereign dynasty will start with David. So, so the fact that Samuel was somewhere after he died and was brought back. So from that and other references to he was joined his ancestors and went somewhere to Sheol underground. The rabbis then create this idea that there's this world to come. And they also create this idea of what if your soul doesn't make it to the world to come? Where is your soul hanging out if you died and you did not repent? You died an evil person. So saying Kaddish for the year after the death is an opportunity to help the soul of the deceased achieve its place in the world to come. So it's in a limbo place until it achieves the world to come. And then some people just don't make it to their souls, don't make it to the world to come. So, I don't spend a lot of time on that stuff because, it clearly the focus of the rabbis is on this world, trying to make our lives as best as possible in this world. Whatever will happen after we die, we don't know. Yes, we should believe in the time of the Messiah, and that's one of the 13 articles of faith from Maimonides, that we believe that the Messiah will come and the dead will be brought back to life. I have no problem believing that, okay, but it's not going to happen today. So, and I'm not living. It could happen today, but Michael's looking at his watch, right? The day over already. Yes, well, it could happen today, right? But we're not living our lives in order to experience Messiah, right? Other religions live their lives in order that they can be around for the second coming of Jesus, or whatever other religion it is. But we're not living our lives as Jews in order to bring the Messiah today. Lubavitch are, but other Jews are not. So we live our lives as if we want to bring the Messiah today. That's our goal, to be as good a person as possible every day of our lives. All right. Any other thoughts about this before we? I hesitate in proceeding because we're going to get to the story about Bruria, and it's not a short story, I don't think. And Bruria is a fascinating person, and one of the few women that are talked about, and as a great scholar, the wife of Rabbi Meir. There are schools in Israel named for Bruria, schools for girls to be studying Torah and Talmud for her. So she's a great person, and I want to give her due. So I think we'll stop here because I have to get ready also for the Purim Carnival too. So we'll stop here for today. We'll have class next Sunday. I'm not sure about March 19th. There's a conference happening in DC from 9 to 3 that I may be going to. But I'll let you know. But as of now, we have class next Sunday. Have a good rest of the day, and happy Purim. And if you can, come by the shul to pick up your Purim basket that is here for you sometime by 1 o'clock when the Purim Carnival is over. Or if you're coming tomorrow night for Purim, you could pick it up then. Have a good day, everybody.
Good week.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See you next week.